Morning, everybody. So thank you for joining us today. I've got an esteemed guest, Baker Johnson, that's going to take us through his insights in the market. So this is our regular series, Unlocking Vertex AI, where we kind of get into all the things that are happening, both from a customer experience standpoint, as well as just AI in general in the market. So Baker, I'll start with you, man. If you want to just introduce yourself real quick to the audience, and we'll jump into some of these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for having me. About 10 years in the contact center space now, and I've worked with TTEC for about 7 of those, and really appreciate how you sort of raise the bar and push us all forward in thinking about what's next consistently. But to introduce myself, Baker Johnson, Chief Business Officer with UJET. UJET is a modern smartphone first contact center platform with a deep partnership with Google and leveraging AI really across the entire platform. I've been here about 5 years, most of that time running marketing and go to market here, but recently shifted into a role focused more on strategy and partnerships.
That's great. So Baker, I was really excited to get you to come in and have a conversation with us, because I think you are in a really unique position just in the market. You guys have kind of the next generation contact center platform that's getting a lot of adoption. You've got insights into the operations of Google and kind of everything that they're doing, as well as, from a product manufacturer standpoint, you're kind of seeing the impact of AI and, what a lot of customers are saying also, right? Which I think most people that kind of go through this, that watch these videos, that's what they're interested in, is kind of what's really happening. What's the reality of AI in the market? So I'd love to kind of get your take on kind of where things are going right now, what you're seeing. Is there things that people are missing? Is there a disconnect in the market? Kind of short-term, long-term view on stuff, whatever top of mind is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a pretty unique vantage point, given our partnership with Google Cloud and working jointly with their team on our roadmap and on delivery of the platform. We do get sort of an advanced view or an early view of what they have in the roadmap for AI and how they're envisioning things. And candidly, we've been hands-on with a lot of the tools for a couple of years now. So a lot of trial and error. And, I really think trial and error is what most typifies what's going on in the market right now. But what I want to be careful about is not sort of painting a fully rosy picture of where we are, because there is a significant disconnect right now in terms of sort of the promise of AI, and specifically agentic AI, and the practical reality on the street today, right? So, one of the fundamental problems in the contact center specifically for years has been too many tools, too many tools, too many screens. And right now that's being exacerbated, right? So AI, we have all these point solutions popping up there. You're getting kind of departmental specific tools. It's exacerbating kind of data silos. A lot of AI right now is being deployed purely in the name of efficiency as opposed to throughput and productivity. And I'll say that the number one disconnect right now is we're just automating legacy processes and workflows. Right. And so, I've heard the phrase, don't pave the cow paths. Right. I actually was reading an article recently from 1990. It's a Harvard Business Review, but it was don't automate, obliterate. And it was talking about the fact that these new evolutions in technology come to bear. We have to really reimagine the entire business process landscape that we're applying them to. And so what we're seeing right now is that Gartner hype cycle really in real-time action. So you go through the, a technology trigger, generative AI hits in 2022, and you go up this sort of roller coaster ride to the peak of inflated expectations. And I think that's where we're going to be this year in 2025, right? The most recent article I read from Gartner showed 40% of AI projects they're predicting will be canceled by 2027. But then they're also saying that a third of enterprise applications will incorporate those same generative and agentic capabilities by 2028, right? So I think, technology is never enough, right? It's always people, process, and technology. And right now, technology is getting a lot of the blame for what I think are misapplications and a little bit of short-sightedness in terms of what the long-term strategy really can be with this technology.
Yeah, I mean, I love your phrase there. Don't pave the cow path. I think that's spot on. And we're seeing that. I was with a customer last week, and the amount of roadblocks, hurdles that were thrown up of why AI is not going to work was kind of surprising. Large multinational company, legacy, they've been around for a long time. Everybody would know who they are. But the data was a major topic of problems for them, of just like, well, we don't have things in the right place, and the level of effort that's going to require to change things is going to be too significant, right? And so they're putting up when it comes to actually like reimagining the business, obliterating things, actually changing the way that they operate. It's interesting because it comes down to a personal level. Like, are people willing to kind of get out of the way and actually take some of the risk and just invest the time? Or are they going to just stand in the way or just be along for the ride? It's interesting to see.
Well, look, there's actually two things there, right? One, nobody talks about egos being a blocker with AI,
yeah.
but even internally, I see so many folks who, it's a little bit of a threat to them personally. I've built my career on having this specific set of knowledge and skills and capabilities. And if AI can replace that, then what do I do next, right? So that definitely gets in the way. But change is hard, period. And change isn't just hard to sort of execute. It's hard to even realize that you're not doing, right? So we've seen this in deals together, right? We have, a really thoughtful, progressive CIO or CTO at the table. They are championing the deal. We're selling total transformation. And then when you get to implementation and all the operators who are dealing with the tech day-to-day come in, they sort of dust off the old binders and go, here's our workflows, let's replicate them.
Right. And so I'm curious, because I'm sure you're running into this on a regular basis of companies like, this is how we operate. We've been doing it this way forever. It works. They're still in business. So can you recreate what we're doing in the new system versus, hey, there's all these advantages of the newer technology. There's new ways to do things. Think about AI from a process standpoint, what you can go automate, how you can create efficiencies. Like, how do you balance that? I mean, both from like a roadmap standpoint, as well as just kind of innovation that you guys are trying to do kind of in your own platforms. I'd love to get your insights on that.
Yeah, look, I think one of the number one shifts, there are multiple shifts happening right in tandem, and AI is really a catalyst for these other shifts. The biggest macro level shift we're seeing in software and enterprise applications is on-prem to cloud.
Sure.
And we see the pendulum swing back every now and then. But fundamentally, the biggest challenge that we see in first gen cloud solutions is that they're doing these huge releases, maybe once or twice a year. And what you're doing is you're actually condensing a significant amount of change management into a one-time super disruptive event, not just, by the way, for the agents, but supervisors, admins, their customers. It's really, really challenging to roll those big, huge releases out all at once. And so what we've done and what we see becoming more the norm is really micro releases that de-risk that change management curve. And so, for example, we're typically releasing new capabilities every 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so it makes that much more like digestible and incremental, and really it becomes continuous innovation.
Yeah.
And actually, by the way, that's the genesis of our relationship with Google, right? Is they had their AI was on that high frequency release schedule, and most of the ISVs that they were working with on the contact center side were doing these big releases once or twice a year. And so there was a significant delay and allowing customers to realize the benefits of the new AI that was being released from Google. And so what they wanted was a single platform through which they could deliver CCaaS and AI innovation as it became available, which, as we all know, if you're watching AI in the headlines, it's every week there's something.
Yeah, it's constant. So, I mean, if you think about it from an AI standpoint, then what, if I think about call it the report card, what's good, what's bad, what's happening in the market, right? I'd love to kind of get your take on what you're seeing from an adoption standpoint, how people are using this, what's the positive impact, what's the potential negative challenges that are coming with this, and kind of where things are going. Because to your point, AI is not slowing down. Like it is I'm having challenges just keeping up with the next news release and what's going to be. It's agentic today. What's it going to be in 6 months from now? I think customers are having that same challenge. We see that of almost a fatigue, if you will, of like, well, I'm not ready to do something because I want things to just stabilize. I'm going to wait and see. Okay, I know what I can go invest in, and I know I can use it for several years, but kind of where do I start? Type of conversation, right?
Yeah. Look, a little out of order in responding to your question here, but I just pointed out something. You're talking about fatigue, and fatigue doesn't just come from every week there's something new, and now the thing I thought I was going to do is obsolete. It actually, I see a big disconnect because, we all have revenue targets, and so sales and marketing are out here muddying the waters of taxonomy. And
Sure.
you talked about agentic, but agentic is about agency, right? We're talking about AI that can autonomously, proactively reason, test, experiment, analyze results, and fundamentally like deploy new workflows and act on that. Traditional conversational AI, which we also called agents, like virtual agents, right, is different, as you know. Overnight, anyone who had a virtual agent said they were an agentic company, right? And so I think a lot of the fatigue comes from actually trying to get through all of that sort of go-to-market fluff that confuses things, and get to what's real, right? But I think generally speaking, when we talk about like what are the positive impacts, right? You talked about like the report card.
Sure.
For me, I think the most positive impact right now is that, when I came into the customer experience space 10 years ago, I was sort of astounded at how far behind the technology and the stack was compared to the tools that we have for sales and marketing, right?
Sure.
And it's because we've been treated like a cost center for so long that we haven't had a lot of innovation, and we haven't had a lot of investment. But AI right now is really inviting real innovation and disruption in our space. So you've got Google, Amazon, OpenAI. I mean, Google's investing something like $100 billion in AI that's going to impact the contact center space, right? So that is phenomenal. And we're nowhere near seeing the long tail of positive results that will drive over the next 2 to 3 decades, right? I think importantly, and we've touched on this, is forcing that same disruption internally, right? So change management, transformation, getting folks out of their comfort zones. You can't stiff arm this stuff the same way you could sort of a new vendor or enterprise application in the past. AI is a mandate at this point. You have to be experimenting with it, or you are going to be obsolete really quickly, right? So I think that's positive. And I think, just from a very practical perspective, we're seeing real and tangible kind of ROI and results against the traditional metrics that we've always measured, right? Containment, handle time, first call resolution, customer effort. All of those metrics are improving. Now, I will say, I think the metrics that we track will change significantly as these technologies become more widely adopted. On the downside of the report card, what we need to work on, I think the technology gets a lot of the blame, by the way. You hear so much about like hallucinations, for example, when in fact that's about, the customer trusting it out of the box and not working with their vendor or with the right SI to really tune their models and put in the right guardrails. And then also, like, we talked about is like automating legacy workflows. Like, we're trying to replicate these channel to channel or human to human interactions instead of reimagining what's possible now in a multimodal world. I think, by the way, in our space in contact center, it's not just about point solutions, but it's about bolt-ons. We see this all the time is, okay, you've got to bring AI into the contact center. So we're going to go get yet another provider and we're going to add it on. And it's sort of this omni-channel problem all over again, where it's all supposed to work fluidly. But you're a customer, I'm a customer, right? Like, you interact with your favorite airline or hotel chain or whomever it is. And, you're handed off and you're passed between these things and you're shifting from a voice interaction to pushing buttons. We're still dealing with a lot of those challenges, kind of all in the name of deflection, candidly. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think the other piece that is sort of the wild, wild west right now is, we truly see AI as a digital coworker in the near future. But that, at UJET, by the way, we've got our VP of HR working on governance and compliance standards for how we use this stuff, because we don't want to stifle innovation. We want people to experiment with tools, but we also don't want 50 AI tools in the business. We want a platform and a cohesive strategy, and we want to ensure that we are, following all the right standards and procedures to protect, our customer data and maintain all the compliance standards that our enterprise customers require.
Oh, I am. It's interesting. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and we were doing a panel conversation, and the thing that kind of keeps coming back in this whole AI evolution, right, is the governance aspect. And you kind of hinted at it with how companies are adopting this, because you're going to have, especially in larger companies, it's almost impossible to fully regulate what people are going to do with AI. You're going to have people have their own AI assistants. You're going to have business units. They're going to stand up some AI solution. It's going to be a bolt-on just because they want to try something. But this idea that you've got to apply some universal governance on how you're going to actually use especially the newer versions of AI, not just generically conversational agents, but especially as you get into the automation side of agentic, and you're letting it touch your data, and it has, the security aspect of it. But what's interesting that we're running into is you've got teams of people that are being assigned the task of, okay, come up with a governance model. And so it eventually gets to legal. And so you've got a legal person that's really, really good at legal things, but they don't necessarily have any idea what AI is doing or where it's going to be hosted and the security that's put around it, the hallucination aspect of who's going to be responsible if something does go wrong. You're going to put that on the manufacturer. You're going to tell Google they need to indemnify you for anything that ever happens, right? And being able to actually apply it into the business, because it's that risk reward of, if you don't do this, the risk of being left behind and that your company is not going to be able to maintain its position in the market, versus the reward of, you've got to do this so that you can kind of recreate yourself. And I think there's an opportunity in the market, especially you're going to see this with kind of, call it the digital natives or the new startups that are going to come in with an AI first mentality, and they're probably going to do the work of 100 people with 5 people, because they're just going to apply AI in their business from day one. And they're never going to think about, oh, I need to hire these other 50 people to go do this stuff. They're just going to leverage the tools from the very beginning. They don't have that legacy debt of some of these technologies that are sitting out there.
Look, I was at a startup summit at Salesforce just a couple of weeks ago with companies like Metronome and 11 Labs and some of these AI first companies. And it was very clear that the new standard is the one person unicorn, right?
Yeah.
Because, they're talking about vibe coding and vibe go to market, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, it is, it's not a 10x improvement in productivity. It is 100x.
Yeah.
And the folks who understand it are getting there really, really quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's gonna, from a disruption standpoint, it's gonna happen. I don't think it happens overnight. And I think that, going back to your point about the ego piece of it, there's gonna be people just that will block it naturally from happening inside of companies. But it's gonna be the difference between what does your company look like 5 years from now versus what does it look like now, and how willing you are to actually adopt some of this and put it into play. So okay, so thinking about kind of this the AI, your perspective, where you're seeing things go in the market. If you think about from what you're hearing from your customers specifically of where they're trying to apply stuff, kind of the real world examples of things which we try and bring into these conversations of what's really happening. How are people really adopting, applying some of these things? I'm curious if you've got any kind of good stories of, hey, here's where we see people applying this and it's working, or maybe where it's not working, where they've had challenges. But any kind of perspective on that would be great.
Yeah, look, I think the reality, how it's really working is exactly what we've been talking about. We are in the very, very early innings with this stuff, trying to figure it out. And so, our customers, and UJET internally, right? We're going through trial and error, right? A lot of learning and mistakes and corrections, and also very promising results, right?
Sure.
I think with our customers, if I'm really candid, there's most of the tangible ROI that we're seeing today, and mostly this is a function of time and sort of statistical significance, right? But it's coming from what we traditionally think about as conversational AI solutions like virtual agent and agent assist. Agent assist, by the way, is a really, really clear ROI model when you think about sort of summarization and transcription and after call. Also really driving consistent and uniform outcomes there.
Yeah.
Now I say we traditionally think about those as conversational AI because, through our partnership with Google, when we're using their CCAI suite and customer engagement suite, they have started to incorporate generative capabilities into those solutions. But the reality of it is some hits and misses and a lot of experimentation. What I will say is that, we feel, our customers tend to be a bit ahead of the curve, and it's because they're willing to run pilots and to test and to learn so that, while other folks are kind of standing on the sidelines waiting for the dust to settle, right? This fatigue you talked about, they're learning and moving ahead. And I think candidly, that's going to be the secret to success here. But there's another really big piece of the puzzle for UJET and for our customers that I find to be overwhelmingly missing in this whole sort of AI conversation, and it's the smartphone, right?
Oh, sure.
And specifically, it's, look, for 3 decades now, our customer service process and applications really have all been built around the original landline phone concept, right?
Yeah.
So DTMF, dual touchstone modular frequency, press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and voice. From an SEO perspective, it's still call center is still the sort of number one search term, right? But the most powerful tool for leveraging AI in your organization isn't on the agent's desk. It's in your customer's pocket, right? And so when you look at multimodality, a lot of times we talk about multimodality with generative AI, people think of marketing use cases and what we can generate in terms of images and video and everything else.
Sure.
But the true power of multimodality in customer experience is that it provides AI or an agent, by the way, with better context, right? That speeds up resolution, reduces customer frustration. So, the smart device not only offers metadata that you can leverage, like location awareness or the customer journey breadcrumbs, from the app or from mobile web, and you can use those for routing and personalization, but it lets the customer share media, right? Like photos, video, and that's actually the fuel source that you need for agentic AI. So I was talking with our founder a few months ago, and he was explaining to me that a voice or a text interaction transmits data at anywhere from 5 to 20 kilobits per second. Okay. Whereas if you just upload a photo, right, like this package arrived and it was broken, AI can see that and act on it at 2 megabytes per second.
Jeez.
So at scale, you're talking about anywhere from 100,000 to 400,000 times greater data throughput. And that's really the bottleneck right now, is getting AI the fuel source it needs. So I think, getting the contextual data through the right smart device into your AI engine is really key. And that's one of sort of UJET superpowers. And we played really well in the space where customers are thinking about a mobile first experience. They've built their business around that modality. And so, I think from a practical perspective, we've been thinking about how to leverage those capabilities for automation and AI for a long time. And the rest of the market's starting to catch up.
No, I think you're spot on with the smartphone piece of it. And I want to dig into it a little bit. It's interesting. I was talking to one of our customers, has been a couple of weeks back. They do home warranty type of work, right? And I think they said that they had something like a backlog of like 500,000 images where you have a technician in a house, they have a water heater that's, up for warranty. They take a picture of it. It goes into a queue. It goes into the call center. Somebody gets assigned a case and they look at it and they're looking for the barcode. They're looking for serial numbers, brand, to see, okay, is this thing still under warranty or not, right? Like, can we actually work on this? And it just seemed like this most obvious use case, to your point of how are you not using AI to simply go process all of this? It's like sitting there right in front of you of this. You could take this workload down from months down to minutes of being able to process this image. And UJET was definitely ahead of the curve with this, with all the stuff you guys are doing for the mobile capabilities, the ability to just basically integrate the entire virtual agent and contact center experience right into the mobile phone, right? I'm surprised that more people have not adopted it and they're not thinking about this. But I think it also comes back to, and this is kind of what I want to get your take on, is we see that you've got an IT organization inside a company that runs the contact center. They run voice. That's what they're responsible for. And then you've got this team over on the side that runs the mobile experience, and they don't necessarily cross over. They don't want to talk to each other. So it's like, how do you bring these teams together to start thinking about this end-to-end customer journey that you can take advantage of these capabilities?
Look, you just articulated the fundamental challenge that AI is going to actually help us all solve. And this is not just a CX thing. This is an enterprise strategy thing, and it's inside out thinking. It's not about data silos. It's about departmental silos.
Sure.
We talk about customer centricity and putting the customer at the center of everything we do, but then we slice and dice ourselves up into sales and marketing and the contact center and HR and finance, and we all have our own systems and our own goals and our own priorities, and even fiefdoms that are competing against each other at times for some ownership of the customer journey, or some impact. But as long as we are designing our business success around internal outcomes, we're going to have this challenge. And fundamentally, what agentic is going to allow us to do is synthesize and index cross-departmental systems, cross-departmental data. Because look, I've spent years as a CMO. I work in the contact center space. I carried a bag for years, but when I'm dealing with Zappos, now I'm dealing with support, or now I'm dealing with marketing. I'm just dealing with Zappos. And what I want is for them to know me, to recognize me. I want some amount of exclusivity based on, the 50 pairs of shoes I bought from them last year or whatever. Right. And I want them to treat me with some degree of personalization based on that. I don't think about which department I'm working with. I'm working with a brand. And as long as we are, again, I just think we divide ourselves too much internally.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's breaking down the silos. I love the concept of synthesizing these access to applications, right? I mean, that's what it's really going to come down to. And if people want to actually do this and transform their business, it's going to take some thought leadership, but just willingness to jump in and actually go take on some of these challenges, for sure.
By the way, you see this, I was having another conversation, big consumer electronics company. And, you think about, the customer journey, and what they see is, okay, Baker called in for a refrigerator today. What they don't see is Baker and his wife, Nicole, are expecting, and they had to get a bigger house. And now they need to buy 5 TVs and 3 refrigerators, all of these things. But all they're seeing is we have the beginning of a refrigerator purchase journey.
Right.
Right. And so we are really compartmentalizing the consumer, and we are missing the opportunity to actually drive like real loyalty and revenue upside through that. But again, we have to shift away from silos, and we have to shift away from that cost center mentality to actualize that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Baker, this has been great. I really appreciate your just having a strong point of view and opinion on things that are actually happening in the market. I think this is really helpful, and just understanding how things are changing, how it's evolving. We went in a completely different direction than I think I planned on us going, which is awesome. Of actually getting into the real world challenges of this, which is not the technology. It really comes down to people at the end of the day, and their willingness to jump in, but also just the existing structure of businesses that have been set up and how they're willing to work together to actually go adopt and put into play some of these new things that are, it's available. And, going back to that conference we were at, one of the comments I made was the technology is no longer the limitation. It can do anything that you want it to go do, right? It's the people. It's like, are we creative enough? Are we willing to go do it? Are we willing to take the risk with it and go apply it? That's really what the limitation's coming down to. So this has been awesome. So thank you for taking time to come chat with us, go through the conversation. We definitely need to have you back on here in a few months to share what's really going on in the market. So
well, everything will have changed by then. So it'll be a new conversation.
Exactly. Awesome, Baker. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Caleb.